Oh, Ed, sorry, that's mine. I left it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all. President Trump is in charge and America is back. This week further demonstrated that the Trump effect is real. Over the weekend, Americans celebrated the return of American-Israeli citizen Keith Siegel and 2 Israelis who were held captive by Hamas terrorists since October 7th, 2023. President Trump and his administration worked diligently to secure their release and are committed to freeing all remaining hostages. Yesterday, as you all know, President Trump held his first foreign meeting at the White House with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And as the president said, the bonds of friendship and affection between the American and Israeli people have endured for generations and are absolutely unbreakable. The president is committed to eliminating Hamas and securing a lasting peace for the entire region. The historic proposal for the United States to take over Gaza, announced by President Trump last night, underscores this commitment. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. President Trump is an outside-of-the-box thinker and a visionary leader who solves problems that many others, especially in this city, claim are unsolvable. We've already seen the results from President Trump's bold peace-through-strength diplomacy on the world stage. In response to President Trump's tariffs this week, both Mexico and Canada took immediate steps to alleviate the illegal alien migration and flow of deadly drugs, particularly fentanyl, into our country. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to permanently supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the U.S. border who will be specifically designated to stopping fentanyl and criminal aliens from pouring into our country. And Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau agreed to appoint a fentanyl czar, list cartels as terrorists, and increase resources to assist the 10,000 frontline personnel at our northern border with Canada. In recognition of these steps, President Trump paused the implementation of tariffs for 1 month while negotiations continue and final deals can be structured. Throughout the transition and during his inaugural address, President Trump made it known that the United States cannot and will not allow the Chinese Communist Party to continue with its effective and growing control over the Panama Canal. Following Secretary Rubio's successful first trip and visit there over the weekend, Panama's president said he will allow its participation in the Chinese Communist Party's, it will no longer allow the participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. That participation will expire. This is significant because Panama was the first Latin American nation to join Belt and Road and now becomes the first to back away from it because of President Trump. And to assist with the ongoing mass deportation effort, El Salvador's president has agreed to the most unprecedented migratory agreement anywhere in the world. Because President Trump is back in charge, El Salvador has offered for illegal aliens of any nationality facing deportation in the U.S. to be booked in his country's prison system. And finally, President Trump's envoy for special missions, Rick Grenell, traveled to Venezuela and not only secured the release of 6 American hostages, but Venezuela also agreed to accept the return of illegal alien Tren de Aragua gang members. All of these incredible victories prove how well President Trump's peace through strength approach is working. And the days of weak American leadership are over. In another success story this week, efforts to seal the border, halt the invasion, and carry out the largest mass deportation campaign continue at lightning speed. Customs and Border Protection has approximately 79 miles of new border wall projects already underway in various stages of construction and planning. The first flights arrived to Guantanamo Bay yesterday afternoon out of El Paso. And who were some of the passengers aboard, you may ask? There were 10 members of the transnational gang Tren de Aragua on this flight. And overall, our heroic ICE agents continue to prioritize the removal of violent criminal illegal aliens in communities across the country. On February 3rd, ICE Dallas arrested a citizen of Nicaragua who has been convicted of sexual assault, strong arm, and lewd acts with a minor and sentenced to 15 years in prison. ICE Los Angeles arrested a Mexican citizen who has been convicted of lewd acts with a minor and sentenced to 364 days. And ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of Mexico who has been convicted of homicide by vehicle and hit and run and sentenced to 6 months confinement. And ICE New York arrested a Venezuelan national and known TDA gang member who has a prior criminal conviction for assault in the 3rd degree causing physical injury. Americans are safer every single time one of these criminals is arrested and deported from our country. On another important and ongoing topic, the Senate is working fast to confirm President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees in the face of relentless media smear campaigns. As of right now, 12 members of the president's cabinet have been confirmed, most recently Pam Bondi, who, as you all know, I was just in the Oval Office for that swearing-in ceremony surrounded by Pam's lovely family. And we look forward to watching her serve as the Attorney General of the United States. According to CNN, President Trump is getting more cabinet picks confirmed so far than the average president in the modern era. Another success story. And we believe it's critical that Republicans in the Senate majority stay tough and keep their foot on the gas to confirm all of the remaining nominees as quickly as possible so we can continue President Trump's important work here at the White House and across our entire federal government. And lastly, throughout his historic campaign, President Trump pledged to restore common sense to our country. And he is continuing to deliver on that with an executive order that he will sign later today. The president will be signing an executive order keeping men out of women's sports to defend the safety of athletes, protect competitive integrity, and uphold the promise of Title IX. This common sense action from President Trump ends the disgusting betrayal of women and girls by the previous administration, who for years catered to radical activists who wanted biological males to be treated as women in workplace showers, competitive sports, prisons, and even rape shelters. Gender ideology insanity is over. Submissions from individuals across the country interested in participating in our new media seat at a future briefing continue to flood in. We are at more than 12,000 and counting. If you're watching right now and are interested, you can continue to apply on our new media website, whitehouse.gov/newmedia. And in the seat today, we have a longtime national television broadcaster. I'm sure many of you recognized her when she came in, Sage Steele, who is now the host of an incredibly successful podcast, The Sage Steele Show, on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And previously, Sage was a fixture at ESPN from 2007 to 2023, primarily hosting SportsCenter, which we all know well, before leaving the company to exercise her First Amendment rights more freely. We are honored to welcome her to the briefing room today. She will be joining the president at the big EO signing later this afternoon. I know many of you will be there as well. So Sage, why don't you kick us off on this very exciting day for women and girls across the country. Thank you for joining us.
It is exciting, and Caroline, thank you for welcoming people like me with a little bit of a different perspective, different background in this seat. It really does mean a lot. Thank you. Obviously, the House already passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which was a really big step for women and girls. So far, the Senate, as we know, has not brought it up to vote. We all know executive orders can be overturned, so I'm wondering how important it is to the President to get Congress to bring this, to pass legislation, so there are no instances like the past administration that really tried to destroy Title IX.
It's incredibly important that Congress immediately acts on this priority. I think the president is really setting the tone, making this a very immediate priority for this administration, just as he promised to do on the campaign trail. And I'd like to get into the executive order a little bit, because it is the news of the day here at the White House, and talk about what this executive action will actually do. So the executive order that the president will be signing later this afternoon, as I said, upholds the promise of Title IX. It also will require the DOJ to abide by the nationwide previous administration's illegal Title IX rewrite that would have dissolved single-sex spaces and opportunities. It also requires immediate action, including enforcement actions against schools and athletic associations comprised of schools that deny women single-sex sports in single-sex locker rooms. The executive order also calls for the convening of private sporting bodies in the White House. We want them to come to this campus so the president can hear in person the stories of female athletes who have suffered lifelong injuries, who have been silenced and forced to shower with men and compete with men on athletic fields across the country. Many of those women will be at the White House today. I encourage all of you in the media to actually talk to them, to hear their stories. And I would also just add one more thing. This is a wildly popular position with the American people. In fact, there was a new poll recently that showed the overwhelming majority of Democrats also support keeping biological men out of women's sports. And so I know the president is very excited about the bill signing that will take place at 3 o'clock this afternoon. You will hear from him more on that later, and we look forward to seeing you there, Stage. So thank you very, very much. Garrett, great to see you here today.
Thank you. On Gaza, the president has spent basically his entire public career criticizing foreign entanglements, nation building, sending American troops to fight abroad, particularly in the Middle East. This plan seems like it could ultimately involve all of those things. Can you explain this reversal and how building and owning Gaza squares with America First foreign policy?
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad. The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. And let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region. And as I said in my opening remarks, we've had the same people pushing the same solutions to this problem for decades. And it's been made very clear to the president that the United States needs to be involved in this rebuilding effort to ensure stability in the region for all people. But that does not mean boots on the ground in Gaza. It does not mean American taxpayers will be funding this effort. It means Donald Trump, who is the best deal maker on the planet, is going to strike a deal with our partners in the region.
He did not rule out American troops in Gaza last night. Are you doing that now?
I am saying that the president has not committed to that just yet. He has not made that commitment, and you know that.
And on the foreign partners, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis have already panned this plan. What foreign partners, if any, have expressed any interest in being part of it?
Well, the president has said he's been socialing this idea for quite some time. He's been thinking about this. He said in his remarks last night, this was not a decision or an announcement that he takes lightly. And the president has already spoken to the President al-Sisi. In fact, that was his first foreign leader call. He's meeting with the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, next week. He spoke with the King of Bahrain. He spoke with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And he has made it very clear, he's been very vocal, that he expects our partners in the region, particularly Egypt and Jordan, to accept Palestinian refugees temporarily so that we can rebuild their home. I'd like to show you some images of Gaza that were taken. Fox News aired this. I mean, that is, as they put it, in an apocalyptic scene in Gaza. This is an uninhabitable place for human beings. Do you really think that families can live their dream in a region that looks like this, with no running water, no electricity? And the special envoy to the president, Steve Witkoff, recently traveled to Gaza, as you all know. And he came back with images that he showed the president of the dire situation here. And the president made this decision with a humanitarian heart for all people in the region. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. Are any officials here preparing to fight Democratic lawmakers in the streets?
Absolutely not.
So some
And
of these,
thanks for the question.
some elected Democrats are so steamed about DOGE. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver says we are at war. Ilhan Omar says we might actually see somebody get killed. And Chris Van Hollen says we have to fight this in the Congress. We have to fight this in the streets. So what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here. And for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
It sounds like something that they're most concerned about is DOGE engineers with access to Treasury systems. Can you clarify, do the DOGE engineers have read-only access
Yes.
in these systems? So they are not allowed to write new code? They are not, okay.
No.
And then one more thing. NBC is reporting that some of the illegal immigrants that we've seen rounded up and arrested are not being deported. They're being released with ankle or wrist monitoring devices, or they have to check in on the phone. So is the administration arresting more people than you have room for?
I have seen the reports, and I'm glad you brought it up because we want to address it. There have been a total of 461 illegal aliens. This is of this morning when I got this information from DHS that have been released from custody. Of the more than 8,000 that have been arrested since President Trump was inaugurated, it's less than 6%. And there are reasons for their release. Some of the factors include a lack of significant likelihood of removal in the foreseeable future, lack of detention availability, which is something this president and this administration has been incredibly vocal about. We are doing everything we can to deport and detain illegal immigrants, but we need Congress's help to increase funding for Border Patrol and for ICE to increase detention capability in our facilities. And then other serious medical conditions have also been the reasons for some of the release of these individuals. But none of them have final deportation orders. Many of them are probably contesting their immigration status. I'd refer you to DHS for more details, but I did get that information because I knew it'd be a question, so thank you. Sure. Yes.
The president and you here again today have made clear, given the devastation, you think Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza and go elsewhere. But Palestinians say this is their home. They don't want to go. The president last night said he's willing to use the military if necessary. Is the U.S. prepared to remove Palestinians from Gaza by force?
The president is prepared to rebuild Gaza for Palestinians and all people in the region, peace-loving people who want real economic development and opportunity in the region. This is a region that has been controlled by Iranian-backed terrorists, Hamas, who have brutalized not just Israelis but Palestinians too. It is because of Hamas that you see those images on that screen, that Gaza has become a demolition site because Hamas launched that brutal attack on Israel on October the 7th. And so again, I would stress, President Trump wants to ensure that this can be a place where all people can live in peace. He is a peacemaker in chief. He made that very clear in his first term. And as for how that will be accomplished, the president and his team are talking with our allies in the region to consider next steps.
But should the American people be prepared to see U.S. military on the ground fighting a ground war against Hamas?
Again, the president has not committed to U.S. troops in the region.
But it is an option.
I have said that the president has not committed to that yet. Sure.
If I could just follow up on that, though, why not rule out the idea of committing U.S. troops? This has been a long-standing argument that the president has made really over the last decade or so. talking about endless wars, not something the U.S. wants. Why not rule out
Because I think the president is very good when he's making deals and negotiating not to rule out anything because he wants to preserve that leverage in negotiations. And so I think that's what he's doing here. Mary.
Follow up on that, though. He also said that everyone loves this plan. He said that in the Oval Office this morning.
Sure.
In fact, the Deputy Prime Minister of Jordan called it a declaration of war on the Arab people. So how does he square the fact that even some Republicans on the Hill are objecting to this or questioning this? How does he square the fact saying everyone loves this plan?
Well, King Abdullah of Jordan will be here next week, so I can provide you more context on the conversations he will have directly with the President of the United States after that meeting. And I would just point out that there's been a lot of leaders and officials all around the world who have doubted, I suppose, the deal-making ability of President Trump. You heard the Panama leader saying that he would not agree to some of the concessions that he has now made because of Secretary Rubio's visit. You had the Colombian president saying he wouldn't accept flights of Colombian illegal nationals who have entered into our country illegally, and those flights are underway. So actions speak louder than words. Dasha.
Caroline, you said the president has been working on this idea for a while behind the scenes now. Is there a written plan based on the president's proposal for Gaza? And if so, when was it drafted and who had a hand in that?
The plan was written in the president's remarks last night as he revealed it to the world and to the American people, and his team are continuing to be engaged on this effort. I saw the National Security Advisor this morning. He has a very busy day of calls, and they will, again, continue to engage with our partners. That includes Steve Witkoff as well. Mary.
Two questions for you on the news of the day. So how is today's executive order going to impact the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles? For example, would a man who thinks that he's a transgender woman be allowed to compete as a female on U.S. soil?
It's a very good question, and the president has actually mentioned this, that he does expect the Olympic Committee and the NCAA to no longer allow men to compete in women's sports. And I think the president, with the signing of his pen, starts a very public pressure campaign on these organizations to do the right thing for women and for girls across the country. Again, this is an incredibly popular position. There have been many notable female athletes who have had the courage to speak out against some very powerful institutions in this country. They deserve to have a voice and a say. The president is bringing their voice to the highest level at the White House this afternoon, and he expects these organizations to comply with this federal executive order that he'll be signing today.
Thank you. And one more. On media coverage of this executive order and the topic in general, what's the White House's view of framing that calls men transgender females or similar rhetoric coming from organizations like the ACLU and GLAAD?
Well, it's been very clear. The policy of this administration is that there are only two sexes, male and female. Pretty simple. Brian Glenn.
Yes. USAID has gotten a lot of attention in the last couple of days with some of these bizarre things that we've been, taxpayers have been funding. Now it looks like there are a couple media outlets that have been dragged into this conversation as far as USAID funding as well. Does the president have any comment on that?
So upon coming out here to the briefing room, I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than $8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOGE team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal government's books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not, that funding will no longer be sent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that effort. Thank you. I'd like to give some love to the back row. I've heard that unfortunately they haven't been called on in years past. So Reagan, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Caroline. The WHC announced that comedian Amber Ruffin, who has called the president a toddler with his pants pulled down, will be the entertainment for this year's Correspondents' Dinner. Does the White House have a reaction to this choice, and will the president be attending the dinner this year?
Certainly an interesting choice. I have the president's invitation on my desk. I have the invitation for myself on my desk as well. Haven't talked to the president about it. When he makes his decision, I will let you all know. But definitely an interesting choice of the comedian. I'll talk to the boss about it and see what we decide. Sure, go ahead.
Caroline, in the back.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Appreciate it. On the executive order set to be signed today, you said that this will be enforced. Can you spell out for schools and the public how exactly the administration plans to enforce this, even at the local level? And on top of that, there are human rights groups who say that this could expose kids to discrimination. What is your response to that?
I think kids have already been exposed to discrimination, especially young women and girls who have been forced to shower in locker rooms with biological men, who have been forced to compete on playing fields with biological men, which is incredibly unfair and unsafe, and again, an incredibly unpopular policy with the American people. As for the actions that this executive order takes, I already laid those out at the beginning of the briefing. I'm happy to give you a copy of this fact sheet so you can let your audiences across the country know.
What's your message to schools who don't comply with this?
They should, because it's going to be federal law in about an hour and a half. So your colleague to your right, to my left.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yes.
Taylor with Spectrum News. You talked a bit about DOGE. Elon Musk is currently a, quote, special government employee who also owns companies that have billions of dollars in federal contracts. You said earlier this week that he has abided by all applicable federal laws, but what steps is the Trump administration taking to address that conflict of interest?
The president was already asked and answered this question this week, and he said if Elon Musk comes across a conflict of interest with the contracts and the funding that DOGE is overseeing, then Elon will excuse himself from those contracts. And he has, again, abided by all applicable laws. In the back left, go ahead.
Trade advisor Peter Navarro, when asked about the External Revenue Service today, said, quote, we're going to collect a lot of tariff revenues and we're going to get tax cuts out of it. Is it the official position of the White House that tariffs will lower taxes for Americans?
The president has always been clear that he believes tariffs are a tax on foreign nations, and he's committed to cutting taxes for the American people here at home. He also believes tariffs are a great revenue raiser for this country, and that's exactly why he has committed to the creation of the External Revenue Service, which I think is a phenomenal idea. We'll just go down the whole row. Go ahead.
Tom Bateman with the BBC. Can you confirm that under the President's plans for Gaza, any and all Palestinians who want to stay in Gaza on their land will be allowed to do so?
I can confirm that the president is committed to rebuilding Gaza and to temporarily relocating those who are there because, as I've showed you repeatedly, it is a demolition site. There is no running water. There is no electricity. The president wants these individuals to live in peace. He is committed to doing that with this very bold new plan, and we will continue to keep you apprised of updates as we receive them. Ed Lawrence,
that's not
go
an
ahead.
answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Ed.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So now that the President Trump's policies are starting to take shape, how long will it take to cycle through and get some of the actual prices that Americans are paying to come down?
Prices at the store and at the grocery pump? Across the board, sure. Well, the president is doing everything he can, obviously, to reduce the cost of living crisis in this country as quickly as possible. That's why he signed a litany of executive orders across the board. In the first couple of weeks here, he declared a national energy emergency. He committed to cutting 10 regulations for every new one on the book. As you know, working for a Fox Business-related outlet, deregulation and energy independence are huge drivers of reducing inflation in this country. And I think Americans can be assured by the results President Trump had in his first term, when again inflation was 1.4% when he left office.
Is it months or is it a year? And will Americans have the patience to wait for it?
I don't have a timeline, but the president is doing everything that he possibly can to reduce cost of living for Americans at home. Phil Wegman.
Thank you. Is it worth risking the life of a single U.S. Marine to turn the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Middle East?
Phil, I'm not sure why you're asking me that question because I've already said the president has not committed to sending Marines or any boots on the ground in Gaza. We'll bring it to the front row.
You're holding out the possibility?
Good to see you again here in the front row, Caroline. Two things. On today's announcement, Title IX, if he scales back the education department or moves to shut it down entirely, what entity will enforce Title IX?
As of now, this will be enforced through education, through Title IX. If the abolishment of the Department of Education continues, which, as the president said yesterday, it's something his team is looking at and considering. It's something he talked a lot about on the campaign trail. Then, of course, we will look at additional maneuvers to ensure that these very important policies can be implemented.
Okay, so the education abolishment thing's still on the table, Title IX.
The president talked about it yesterday in the
Yeah.
Oval Office, and he has good reason to talk about it. I mean, look, our education system is failing students in this country. The Nation's Report Card, I brought it up in my remarks last week, it shows that fourth graders are not reading at the level they should. I believe it was 40% of them are proficient in reading. As the mother of a child, I want an education system that helps my child read and write, teaches him math, nothing else in the classroom. And the president is wholeheartedly committed to we can make academia great again in this country.
One other
Deanna.
question.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Does the president, is he looking at offering anything to these Arab countries that take in Palestinians? Is he willing to give them anything in return? And secondly, when the president announced his taking over Gaza policy yesterday, was Netanyahu aware of this? And what was his reaction when Trump presented that idea to him?
I won't get ahead of the president's discussions or negotiations on your first question about what would be offered. I think the president's made it clear that he expects these nations in the region to step up and to accept Palestinian refugees who will be temporarily relocated for the rebuilding of Gaza. As for whether Prime Minister Netanyahu was aware before the president's remarks, he was indeed. I wasn't present for that reaction. But again, this is something the president has been socializing and thinking about for quite some time. Nick, good to see you.
Oh, Jordan.
Jordan, sorry.
Thank you, Caroline. So Secretary Hegseth announced yesterday that Army recruiting levels have reached 12-year highs in December, 15-year highs in January. What is making young people want to serve the military under the Trump administration, and how does that contrast to Biden's failure consistently to meet recruiting average?
Yeah.
Or, does DEI President Trump's anti-DEI agenda play a role in this?
First of all, the recruitment level for all branches of our military are at crisis levels, and it serves as a national security risk that our military branches are not fully staffed to where they need to be. And I do believe it's a culture problem within these institutions that the president is very much committed to fixing, as emphasized by the executive orders he has signed to root DEI out of the military. And I think when young men and women who are honorably signing up to serve in our nation's military see somebody like Pete Hegseth, the new Secretary of Defense, who is a proven warfighter, who risked his life in battle for this country, who understands what it means to deploy and to defend the Constitution and your nation abroad and to put your life on the line. When they see a leader like that and a leader like President Trump, who is committed to peace through strength, that's very inspiring. And we look forward to seeing those recruitment numbers and retention numbers skyrocketing over the next 4 years. And I know Pete Hegseth is committed to increasing recruitment at all branches of the military. I would defer you to the Department of Defense on exactly what he plans to implement. Jeff.
Thanks very much. Two questions. One, the president yesterday used the word permanent for permanently resettle Palestinians. I hear you saying temporarily today. Is that a shift or a specific change that you want to highlight? And my second question is, yesterday he spoke about the U.S. owning Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Who owns Gaza now, and how would the U.S. acquire ownership?
Well, Gaza is currently run by Iranian-backed terrorists in the Middle East, Hamas, who we all agree, I think everybody in the region agrees, that can no longer stand. Just look at the events of October 7th and the events since. And the president, again, is committed to rebuilding the region for all people who want to return to it once it is no longer a demolition site and it's a place where people can actually live and thrive in harmony, as he said last night. His words, not mine. Daniel.
Permanent versus temporarily resettle? Can you just
The
clarify
president
that?
has made it clear that they need to be temporarily relocated out of Gaza for the rebuilding of this effort. Again, it's a demolition site right now. It's not a livable place for any human being. And I think it's actually quite evil to suggest that people should live in such dire conditions. Daniel.
Caroline, thank you so much. The daily guidance says that the president will be meeting with a pair of governors today, Governor Abbott of Texas and Governor Newsom of California. It comes after the president took executive action to turn the water back on in California. Billions of gallons are flowing now. What can you tell us about the two meetings and the importance of President Trump's actions to help people in California?
Sure. Those meetings will be taking place shortly, so I will get out of here to get to those meetings, we can always provide you a readout, as we always do. We try to be very transparent about what the president is doing in the Oval Office. Perhaps he'll even call you in to join him. We never know around here, as you all know. But Governor Abbott is obviously a great friend and an ally to the president. He has been on the front lines of the border crisis in this country. And as for Governor Gavin Newsom, well, the president is willing to work with anybody from blue states or red states to do what's best for the American people. And the president really enjoyed his trip to Pacific Palisades last week. He felt very inspired by the frustration of the residents there. And he has been wholeheartedly committed to ensuring that the water is flowing in California to prevent these wildfires, and also that people have access to their properties. And he has continued to apply tremendous pressure to Gavin Newsom and also the Los Angeles mayor to allow private residents and property owners to access their property. He believes that's their right to do so, and they should be able to do it. And one more thing before I wrap up, because I do want to get to these meetings, and I will see you all at the EO signing later this afternoon. I would just say that you brought to mind California and North Carolina, who continue to be on our hearts, and the president and this administration are committed to ensuring that these individuals get the funding that they need. And I would just say a strong message to Democrats who are out there pretending to be outraged about the long list of crap that this administration is cutting, federal waste and funding, like $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million on a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. I could go on, and I'm happy to provide this list to every single one of you. Democrats are outraged that the American people want to be, they want their taxpayers going to good uses, not stuff like this. But then they're very quiet about the fact that there are still North Carolinians and people in California who have lost everything. And in the last 4 years, this federal government did nothing to help them. This president will continue to put Americans first. And I think the successes of this week so far speak to that. And it's only Wednesday. So I'll see you guys later this week, and we'll see you this afternoon. Thank you very much.
All right, there's Caroline Levitt with your briefing. How's everybody doing? Ooh, who gifted subs? Somebody gifted subs. Otto gifted 5 subs. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, Carolyn does a great job. What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? YouTube randomly selects the subs. Yes, exactly. YouTube randomly selects who gets the subs. How's everybody doing? Boom, boom, boom. Still alive? Yeah, that's a good thing. What's up, Mike? Do. How's everybody's day so far? Everybody's good? Let's see if there's anything else going on. President Trump signs executive order. That's at 3 o'clock.
9.8% today, January 1st of 2025, it's 3.8%. So when we saw 9% inflation under the Biden administration, this was a way that I could help give back to Iowans some of their hardworking dollars so that they could offset some of the cost of gas experiencing.
And what, Governor, what advice would you give the federal government as we try to streamline our services for the American taxpayer?
I think, you know, it makes us, go for it. Everybody's going to tell you you can't do it. I haven't heard any other suggestions on doing something different. In Iowa, it had been 40 years since we'd taken a look at the structure of government. That's ridiculous.
Kim Reynolds.
It was bloated, it had grown, and we could do things better. And this has been an opportunity. It's changed the culture of our agencies, our cabinet, and most importantly, our employers. They feel like they're making a difference, and they're making a difference in how they're serving Iowans.
Amen. Thank you. And coming from Texas and looking at the growth of Texas and Florida, people vote with their feet, and they're moving to the states like Iowa, Tennessee, Texas, Florida, because we're doing it the right way. And at the federal level, Mr. Chairman, we can and we must do better. And thank you, Governor, and thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Subramaniam from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just been listening to the comments today during this hearing, and I hear these things like we want to trim the inefficiencies in government. We want to do the least amount of harm, is what someone said. We want to get rid of the low-performing employees, but that's not quite what's happening, is it? Right? These are blanket cuts across the board that are indiscriminate. And let's be clear. This DOGE effort it can't be about getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Because if you look at our federal spending, civil servants are a drop in the bucket when it comes to our budget. The math doesn't work, actually. In fact, civil servants actually save us a lot of money down the road. They prevent food illnesses. They prevent a lot of bad things from happening that would cost us more money down the road. So, yes, there are inefficiencies in government. Let's fix them. That's bipartisan. I've done that work myself. But, if the kitchen cabinets in your house are broken, fix them. Don't burn the house down, right? And I don't think this is about waste, fraud, and abuse. I think this is about revenge over civil servants who may have slighted the president. I think this is about control over the federal agencies and federal government, ones who especially
God, what a
had
crybaby.
actual oversight and did actual regulation of companies that were slighting consumers. And this is about stopping the protections of consumers. And it's about having civil servants with a certain ideology. And this is not legal, and this is not constitutional. And I wish we had the DOGE folks in here today, but we don't. So we just have the governor of Iowa. And so I'll just ask Governor Reynolds, when you made DOGE reforms in Iowa, did you freeze all spending while you were doing your review?
No, we did not.
And when you brought in those consultants, did you let those consultants take over your payment systems and give access to every person's personal health information to them?
We did not.
And do you think it's okay for outside consultants with no security clearance to handle classified documents?
No.
And do you think it's okay for outside consultants to handle sensitive data haphazardly that could cause cybersecurity breaches? I'm just curious.
That's not been our experience in Iowa.
Yeah, we don't know who the people are. At least you knew who your consultants were, right? We even tried to go into the Treasury building and meet with them. We tried to go into USAID and meet with them, and we were turned away, us, members of Congress. But the reason I know what's going on inside those buildings is because I have constituents who actually work in those buildings. And let me just tell you some of the stories I'm hearing. One at USDA said that they've frozen funding to control invasive species protections, which would cost us hundreds of millions of dollars if these pests get into our country and devastate crops and livestock in states like Iowa. Or at one agency,
This is how you know he's over the target. They're all over the target.
And said, just cut
They're so
50%
terrified,
of the
all of
employees
them.
indiscriminately. And then the DOGE employee actually started living inside the building. So our federal agencies are now Airbnbs, apparently. And now we have nuclear scientists that are resigning. We have PhDs. They're not dumb people. They may not have 200 IQs, but it doesn't seem like the DOGE people do either. But what they're doing is they're resigning because they don't want to put up with this anymore. And it's going to be hard to replace these folks. It's going to be a brain drain on our federal government. This is not the right sizing of government. This is the dumb sizing of government, and it has to stop. And Congress has oversight over this. This committee has oversight over this, but what are we doing about it? We're talking to the governor of Iowa, no offense. We're talking to think tanks. We're talking to folks that are not actually doing this work. Let's actually give the American people answers. Let's give our constituents answers.
Joe in Las
Let's
Vegas,
actually
appreciate the super
use
chat.
Congress's
Thank you very
powers
much.
to fight this, or at least figure out how we can work together to fix what's wrong in government. I'm down to do that. I know both sides of the aisle want to fix what's wrong in government. The American people deserve to know, though, what's going on right now, why it's happening, and how to fix this. But what's happening right now is way overstepping the bounds of executive power. It's overstepping Congress's power. We're getting rid of agencies that Congress authorized.
Boo-hoo.
We're going way over the line here, and this is unprecedented and needs to stop. And so we're going to continue to ask questions. We're going to continue to ask for hearings, and we're going to continue to ask for the people who are actually doing this, because we want answers. I yield my time to the ranking member.
And I would just ask the gentleman from Virginia, and we want to add to that, we want Elon Musk to come here since he's an unelected, unaccountable, major player
Jerry
in all
Connolly.
of this, unlike the process in Iowa, which was transparent and accountable.
Oh, yeah.
In order to answer to this committee in our legitimate oversight functions. Is that not correct?
Absolutely, that's correct.
I thank the gentleman.
Yeah, good luck.
Chair, now recognize myself for the purpose of asking questions. Governor Reynolds, again, thank you for being here. You're a role model for government efficiency. That's why we asked you to come in, and you've done a tremendous job explaining what you did in Iowa as we work, at least on this side of the aisle, to sincerely try to reform government and reduce unnecessary spending in Washington. I understand you were asked a question that mischaracterized a bill you signed a couple of years ago that addressed the Iowa State Auditor. Can you talk about why the legislature passed the bill?
Yeah, the bill was passed, again, to promote government efficiency, so it completely fell in line with the government efficiency and alignment bill that we were working on. And what it did is it required that two government agencies to mediate conflicts rather than going to the court and racking up legal bills that the taxpayers have to pay for. So it did not limit the auditor's access to necessary information. It was more about the process of when two agencies disagreed, that they could actually mediate their conflicts instead of taking it through the courts, racking up additional cost on taxpayers.
Right. Like you worked with your legislature to amend laws that needed change to complete your alignment. President Trump has said he will work with Congress where he needs to, but he will take executive action where he can. You did that too, correct?
I did the same thing. When we started, I did it through 2080 agreements. I had one director acting for both public health and human services. We did it through a 28E or an MOU. We did a proof of concept, and then we took it through the legislature. I also did executive orders with the rules moratorium. We put that, I initiated that with an executive order, and then when we took the next step, we actually took it through Congress when it needed a statute change to implement some of the ideas that we did either through an executive order that I stood up or through a 28E. Then we brought in the Congress and utilized them to make the statute reflect what we were doing.
Great. You eliminated a host of state agencies, commissions. It saved money and streamlined the state bureaucracy. I wonder, did you encounter opposition from entrenched interest when you did that?
You know, we really didn't, but I will say we did a lot of the homework on the front end. And these were common sense changes, as I talked about. You can't have different functions spread across multiple agencies and expect to be efficient. So we brought in the directors early, we brought in the leaders, we brought in the chairs, we reached out to stakeholders, but no. And the few incidents where there were some concerns that were raised, it never came to bear.
So it sounds like people in Iowa were serious about reforming government. I don't get that feeling in Washington, D.C., at least with half of the Congress. What sort of blowback did these proposals get when they were first announced?
Well, again, I mean, we hadn't looked at the government structure for 40 years, so I don't think they were surprised. I had done a complete tax overhaul. Again, I started with the merger between public health and with human services, and so I had a great proof of concept. So as we worked with the directors, we were also able to anticipate what some of the arguments might be, what some of the opposition would be, so we could do the research on the front end to be able to provide the answers to the individuals about why we were doing what we did, and it was very, very effective. But it's hard to argue that it doesn't make sense to not have licensing spread across 11 agencies, or to put 100 troopers back on the road by putting your motor vehicle enforcement unit in with the Department of Public Safety. That's 100 troopers that we were able to put on the road.
Well, did some say that your proposals would disrupt government services and lead to other problems?
A lot of it was the existing, maybe some of the agencies that we were moving off the cabinet. It was the agencies, not the individuals, not Iowans that had the most pushback.
See, I think that's who's leading a lot of the
agencies.
Fear and criticism of Elon Musk. I think it's some of the federal agencies and federal employees who are about to be disrupted.
Yeah, that saw their kind of, their territory being uprooted.
So were their fears proven to be overblown? Was there damage, if any?
There was not damage, and we haven't had really any pushback whatsoever. And I keep saying this, but even the employees and the agencies, they love the culture that we're creating. There's actually more upward mobility within the agencies because we've broadened their scope on what they can impact. And they love that. They like being a part of that.
Were people in Iowa ever allowed to work from home for years after COVID?
No, not for years.
That's part of the problem. I think that's what set the ball rolling of fear and opposition among a lot of the federal employees. There's so many in this town that are still working from home because of COVID years later. So they've been brought back to work, and now we're talking about bringing agencies in and letting them justify their existence, and cutting agencies and cutting wasteful spending and eliminating duplicative services and eliminating duplicative agencies. And it's just created all this fear and mass hysteria with my colleagues across the aisle. But we're committed to work with this administration to reduce and eliminate unnecessary spending and wasteful spending, and hopefully we'll be able to do that like you did in Iowa. But thank you, Governor.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Ansari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. This is an unprecedented moment in our nation's history. Donald Trump and an unelected billionaire, Elon Musk, are illegally dismantling our government agency by agency and illegally stealing your data, your money, and your services. I would love for Mr. Musk to come here and testify before this committee so we can understand his qualifications to do this, because last I checked, running a social media platform does not qualify you for understanding how the U.S. government works and making sure
that's
that
what he does
and serve the American people.
What his qualifications
One
are
of my
for
Republican colleagues just
what are his
IQ of
qualifications
federal
for
workers.
talking
They
about
want us to think
dealing
that
with
federal
money?
Workers are faceless, nameless bureaucrats roaming the halls of Washington, D.C., when the reality is that over 85% of federal employees live outside of Washington, D.C., and they're your neighbors, your friends, and your families. More than 34,000 federal employees live in Arizona, and about 7,000 live in my district. They make sure that your highways are running smoothly and safely so we can get to work on time. They make sure your grandparents get their Social Security checks on time so that they can afford food. In my district, we have multiple VA health centers to make sure our veterans get access to basic health care. Maricopa County, one of the largest counties in the United States, has over 245,000 veterans who do not know if they're going to keep getting their benefits. That is absurd and disrespectful.
That's
to so many
gaslighting.
Arizonans
Total
who put their lives
gaslighting.
on the line for this
She knows that's not true, and they know it's not
because
true.
of the Musk funding freezes, I had constituents calling my office panicking about whether they would be able to get urgent surgeries.
Yeah, sure she did.
Renters on subsidies are distressed about whether or not they will get aid or get evicted and end up on the streets. Even after Trump realized how disastrous his misguided freezes were
practice?
and reversed some of them,
Okay.
there are
Love
healthcare
you.
clinics
Have
in my
good.
district that are laying off staff and cutting critical programs like STD prevention and substance abuse care because they were labeled as DEI. Republicans want to take a vote about fentanyl later today, and yet they're cutting care to get people off of fentanyl.
Less, it's
I
70 in
previously
Alabama.
served as
Oh,
the vice mayor
jealous.
of Phoenix, Arizona, the fifth
We'll
largest
see what it
city
is
in
here.
the
It's-
country, and I can
it was
tell
26
you
before.
firsthand how much
It's a little
federal
warmer
funding
now.
and agencies matter to a city like Phoenix.
32.
It literally keeps your grandparents and your children fed, your streets safe, your public safety and police and fire running, make sure public transportation is operating, and that air conditioning is running during our extremely hot summers.
She's reading this.
While
It's
Trump
amazing
and
someone has
Musk
to
are
write
allegedly
this.
concerned about making
Imagine
our
being the
government
person who
more
has to write
efficient,
this
they
for this
wanna
dummy.
lay off and dismantle the very people and departments who are keeping the country running.
This is painful.
These loyal, dedicated employees are doing more and more with less and have been for decades. This graph shows the federal workforce. It has remained at nearly the same level for 50 years while the U.S. population.
All right, that's enough for her. Let's watch something else.
President, over the last several weeks, we have worked at record pace here in the Senate on nominations.
This guy's awful, too.
This has been one of those tasks that happens literally every time that there's a new president that comes in, but the pace that we have moved on nominations.
Scott Turner? I thought Scott Turner was already approved. I can't stand any of these people. I can't watch any of this. Can't watch it. We'll wait for the president at 3 o'clock. It's like another hour or so. Amazing, these Democrats at a hearing about cutting wasteful spending, and that's what they're doing, crying in their Cheerios about the richest guy in the world and what his qualifications are to effectively run a business, which is what basically how he's approaching government. The same way he would approach anything that he was brought into. Well, let's find where all the mistakes are. Let's find where all the dead bodies are. Let's find where all the waste, fraud, and abuse are. Let's start there and then try to get this thing running like a fine-tuned machine, which is never going to happen in government, but we all know what he's doing, whatever his qualifications, she says. Some elected official from Arizona that no one's ever heard of, who's done nothing, is going to ask us what Elon Musk's qualifications are to come in and try to clean up essentially what is like the biggest private public company in the world, which is the U.S. government, the biggest of everything. They're the biggest landlord. They're the biggest this. They're the biggest credit holder. They're the biggest of everything. What are his qualifications, she says. You can't make up how stupid these people are. You can't make it up. You couldn't cast a show and say, okay, we got to find the dumbest people we can. You couldn't come up with a better job than we do by electing these people. And careful what you wish for. Elon Musk in front of you is the last thing you want. The last thing you want with your stupid questions. He'll laugh at you, chew you up, and spit you out. Oh, we have wow, what a look at this. You're not gonna. I know you're gonna find this hard to believe. Not like it's. We have protests in, of all places, Minnesota. Wow, shocking. Protests in Minnesota. Where's Black Lives Matter? I'm sure they're on the ground somewhere. Oh, maybe not. They already took their $400 million and ran. Protest in Minnesota, and protest.
And we will do a job.
Protest in Philadelphia. And they all look the same. We can't even hear you. And now we have protests in Texas. Oh, I wonder what city in Texas this might be in. Maybe Austin? Do not buy off Amazon, she said. No, these are not too organized. I mean, oh God, it's just painful. Painful, 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 painful. So, all right, so what I'll probably do here is I'll leave the stream going. I'll put up that hearing on government efficiency that the Democrats have got their panties in a twist on. We'll leave that running until the president's executive order signing, which should be about 3 o'clock. And then I'll jump back on when the president starts. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll leave the stream going, and then we'll be back when the president starts. You should hear what Jack is saying about Politico. Yeah, I know. I've seen the stories on Politico and the money that they were spending on. We can go over there if you want me to hear it. I just saw it. I saw Jack.
Here at Allegiance, we feel like American flags should be made in America.
I guess he went to commercial. Yeah, I've seen this. I've seen the story. On what's going on with Politico and the money. I don't know if they're in trouble or not. Maybe they are. Elon says there's going to be a lot of these companies that are going to have all of a sudden a big drop in revenue based on all the money they were getting from these corrupt Democrat front groups like this. They said all the money was for... So they were basically buying subscriptions to Politico for all the people who work in government. I guess, is the story. Something to that effect. To the tune of $8 million or something like that. So this is why they're screaming at this hearing. Oh, you know what? I could probably can I go back here? Yeah. Duh. Stupid. All right, we'll go back. Let's see what Jack said about Politico.
With a huge press conference at the White House, we here in Real America's Voice are going to be working to get you Brian Glenn, who is there from the United States government, from the taxpayer. It was propped up by millions of dollars. The press secretary saying right there that $8 million in taxpayer money was going to subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the taxpayer dime. So think about it. It was Politico that came after the Hunter Biden laptop story all the way back in 2020, 5 years ago. It was Politico that leaked. And this
Right. So let's just pause here. So here's the way to think about it. Because you'll see people that'll try to explain it away as saying they bought subscriptions for everybody in government. That's what they happen to, they all love Politico. So the government bought these subscriptions for thousands of people who work in government so they would have access to Politico so they wouldn't have to pay for it. That's going to be like the lame way they're going to try to explain this away. Now, think about it this way. Think about if Ron DeSantis had used Florida taxpayer money to buy subscriptions to The Blaze because they all liked watching Mark Levin's show. And he bought a subscription for I think The Blaze is like $99 for the year, or $199 or something like that. He bought subscriptions for everybody, and then The Blaze didn't, in their filings, I think they're a private company, so I don't know what they have to put out, but they didn't disclose that revenue coming from the state of Florida for subscriptions. And then The Blaze did nothing but write glorious coverage of whatever the governor and whatever was going on in Florida. And then we found out. So, there's your kind of your thought process to kind of put this in perspective. The Blaze, what do you mean The Blaze ? Yeah, The Blaze. The Blaze. Or the Daily Wire, or anybody else that has a yearly subscription to watch their shows, and you get my point.
is from Sean Davis pointing it out, that leaked the Dobbs decision that nearly caused the assassination of Supreme Court justices back in 2022. Are we supposed to find out that we've actually ourselves been paying for Politico this entire time? This is a massive scandal, a massive, massive scandal. And of course, Max Tani yesterday from Semaphore had the tweet up that said, oh, Politico's payments haven't gone out on time. The staffers there haven't been getting paid. What's going on? What has our government been paying for?
I think it's a scandal. I don't think it's a massive scandal. And I think it's going to become a lot less of even something to talk about as we get into the real scandals, which I'm sure are still to come.
What have they been doing?
Make this look like
this is crazy. Let's we got only 1 minute here until the break. Let's have we have Brian Glenn up at the White House. Brian, just give us a quick preview, and then we'll come back to you after the break over your political question and how big of a story this really is.
Yeah, that really wasn't the initial purpose, but when I came across the wire, Jack, and I saw that story, I thought this is just combined with some of those bizarre items that have been on that list for USAID. And so to find out that we're now funding, taxpayer dollars are funding some of these things, and Politico for subscriptions. I mean, I cannot believe that that's where we're in. And I think if you dig a little deeper, Jack, we're going to find that they may not be alone in all of this, but it's certainly a breaking situation here at the White House.
That's exactly right, Brian. We're going to come back to you in just a second after the break. Stay right here. Breaking news, Human Events Daily, live.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's. I think if you want to make it into seemingly like a huge scandal, you can. I think $8 million is a lot for subscriptions. I don't think it's a huge. I don't think it's like the end of the world. I think it's just more corruption that we know is there that they're going to find. They're going to find things way bigger than this. I think Elon's right. I think you're going to see a lot of groups all of a sudden have a serious or somewhat of a drop in revenue because they're doing the same things here. So you're going to find all the bad actors, or they're going to flush out as many of them as possible. Not everyone's going to be a huge end of the world scandal. I mean, you can frame it that way if you want to. But it's just more of a big red flag to all of us taxpayers that say this is why Donald Trump was elected. And this is exactly why he has Elon Musk and his people doing this. You think anyone else would? You think any normal Republican would do this? I mean, seriously, you really want to ask yourself, just ask yourself that. You think if Trump put in any other, you think he would? Think there's any other Republican that would tackle this, that would have the manpower, the brain power, the everything else to tackle this the way Elon can tackle it because he's not elected and he has a background and he can go find things and they can write code and they can do things to find things? No one else would do this. That's why the Democrats are so frantically running, because they know he's going to find it all, or find most of it. Yeah, good point, Otto, because they're all corrupt too, most of the people who would be put in charge to do something like this. You take the guy who doesn't have any money motivations whatsoever, and you put him in charge of it, which is exactly what he did. So, all right, well, I'm going to jump off, but I'll keep it going, and we will we'll keep up. Which one? We'll see. We'll put this hearing up for as long as it goes, and then that should take us to President Trump. And he'll sign that executive order.
When he was working for the Capitol Police. I'd also like to mention, if I might,
of the sudden, which I think is certainly a beautiful thing. So much of this government waste has been operating in the shadows, where the American people don't know about it and has been largely unaccounted for. And so many of these programs wouldn't exist and will not exist now that they're being exposed. I could give so many examples of wasteful spending, but I'd like to name just a few and get y'all's opinion on these. Just recently, the Department of Health and Human Services spent over $400,000 studying whether lonely rats seek cocaine more often than happy rats do. Mr. Schatz, thank you for being here. I'd like to ask you, do you think that that's a responsible use of taxpayer dollars?
No, it's not. And those are the examples that get people interested in doing more about wasteful spending. They're silly, but it's where their money is going.
That's exactly right. And Mr. Resch, let me ask you, do you think that it is responsible for the federal government to tax working class American citizens to pay for studies that cost over $400,000 asking whether lonely rats seek cocaine more often than happy rats do?
I have no position on that particular policy. I would need to know more.
You have no position on whether we should be spending taxpayer dollars getting rats high on cocaine?
I know that addiction is an important problem, and if it leads to insights that lead to reductions in addiction, I'm sure that it has a multiplying effect. If that's the case, you would have to see the indicator.
I agree, and I'm going to reclaim my time here. I agree that addiction is a very serious problem, but I doubt that the plumbers and electricians and working class citizens of North Texas that I represent are going to be very happy whenever they find out that they're paying to get rats high. Let me give you another example. We've recently spent $123,000 to teach youth in Kyrgyzstan how to go viral. Mr. Schatz, do you think that that's a good use of taxpayer dollars?
No, I don't.
I don't either. What about you, Mr. Resch?
No position.
No position. Okay. Got it. Let's do another one then. We've recently spent over $3 million from the Department of State for girl-centered climate action. Mr. Schatz, is that an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I don't think so.
Mr. Resch?
No position.
No position. Got it. What about, over the past 4 years, the United States has had a grotesque border crisis that was created by the federal government in the Biden administration. Nevertheless, we've spent over $2 million for border security in Paraguay. Mr. Schatz, let me ask you, do you think that that is an appropriate use given the context of American taxpayer dollars?
Well, only if it impacted immigrants or whatever you want to call them, people come to the United States illegally. That might have some merit, but depends on the purpose.
I agree. What about you, Mr. Resch?
Again, depends on the purpose and the outcome.
Got it. I think that that's incredibly enlightening. Over the past couple weeks, really, we have seen all of the nonsensical areas that our tax dollars have gone to. We found that our taxpayer dollars, we just found out today, are being sent to left-wing media outlets like Politico and the BBC. We've known for a long time that our tax dollars are funding NPR and PBS. We've seen our tax dollars go to left-wing NGOs, and I think that the takeaway is that large portions of the left's institutional ecosystem are dependent upon taxpayer subsidies. And I think that that's a problem. I'm thrilled DOGE is here because we're going to get rid of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Simon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and thank you, witnesses, for coming to speak with us today. I really appreciate the conversation, and like much of the testimony and conversations I'm hoping to have and hear during my time in oversight, I think that there are spaces where we should all agree government should be more efficient. Absolutely. As someone who went through college and had to bring my baby to childcare, I get it. I understand, and I remember when that childcare was shut down. I couldn't go to class. I couldn't go to my night job. I get it. I am right there with so much of the conversation. What's interesting, though, to me is last week when I returned to district, I went to go visit, like many members, organizations that are providing work on the ground for almost vulnerable populations. I was prepared to offer a check that an organization, East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation, had earned through a grant process to extend housing to elderly Asian Americans in the East Bay. Again, these are the descendants of the folks who built the West. Elderly folks seeking and needing low-income housing. Clearly, they're not going to get that money right now. Housing is on the line, as is childcare, as is Medicaid, as is Medicare. After this meeting, I will go and visit the president of a children's hospital. He's in my office right now, and I went to go literally sit with the folks in the NICU last week. Care is in jeopardy. There is a heart transplant that is in jeopardy. A small child, I would like for us to look at in the faces of that parent. What's really interesting to me, I actually have a question for you, Dr. Rush. Like you, I've had this amazing benefit to study government budgeting. I have an MPA with a focus on municipal and federal finance. I have a lot to learn, as we all do. But in understanding where we are in this push by DOGE and our colleagues to look at government spending, which I agree we got to figure it out, I'm curious, because this ripoff we're talking about, again, halting essential services for people to live in communities where there is waste, let's get rid of it, but by freezing basic services, I want to ask you this. By weakening the country's social service structure within a week, causing chaos, would you agree with me that instead of going after the Department of Education, again, if you have a young woman in college and she is abused, the Department of Education has an infrastructure to investigate that rape? I can go on and on, they do. We get rid of the Department of Ed, what happens there? Instead of going after the Department of Ed and USAID, wouldn't it make a lot of sense for us to think about other areas that are right in our face? Listen, the constituents of California's 12th district are paying over $6 billion in tax dollars for DOD. That could pay for 35,000 registered nurses per year and salaries of 50,000 elementary school teachers. If we're serious, sir, about right-sizing our government, I would recommend that we start there, in an institution, in a department that has failed 7 audits with an estimated multi-trillion dollars of waste and abuse in contracts that go to private companies. Would love to know, Dr. Rash, your thoughts on where we should start.
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. I'd just like to note that throughout this testimony, I've been asked questions about a very, very insignificant proportion of our federal budget, and that is domestic discretionary spending. If the committee is serious about right-sizing government in terms of dollars, then it should not. That very tiny proportion of our overall federal budget has seemed to be the focus throughout this meeting. $14,000 grant to something through AID is nothing compared to the non-discretionary funds. But if we were talking about the Department of Defense, it is not subject to some of the same scrutiny as well as these programs that offer social services, so on down the line.
Thank you to all the witnesses. Thank you to all the witnesses that came today, and thank you, Dr. Rash, for your answer. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Jack from Georgia.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for letting me get a little exercise this morning. I appreciate that. I want to start by saying, throughout this hearing, I've heard over and over and over again from our colleagues on the other side, Elon Musk's name invoked. And to me, it rings very similar to what I experienced over the last 9 years I've worked for President Trump. It seems like the Democrat playbook from 2015 through 2025 has been to singularly target one individual and over and over repeat talking points against that individual. And some pre-political advice, in 2016, it didn't work. In 2020, House Republicans gained seats. In 22, we gained seats. In 24, Donald Trump delivered one of the most impressive historic landslide victories we've ever seen. And it's because he offers solutions to the American people, and that's exactly what we House Republicans are doing. I want to spend my time today engaging with Mr. Schatz, talking about a solution that I campaigned on, that really resonated with the constituents across my district. And I'll predicate by noting I'm probably one of the few members on this committee who actually was a federal employee From 2017 to 2021, I served in the Executive Office of the President as the President's White House political director. And one of the things that I was tasked with while working for the President was helping move departments and agencies outside of Washington, D.C., so that they could be headquartered in areas that are more reflective of the people they're targeting to, or designed to serve. And Mr. Schatz, in your testimony, I very much appreciated you noting that 17 of the 24 agencies only use an average of 25% of agency headquarters office space. The American taxpayer is paying for office space that is not being used. And it's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. In 2019, we relocated large agencies within the Department of the Interior to Colorado, and we found a lot of success in doing so. So I just would love to get your thoughts and comments on that. I think that's an innovative solution that this Congress can move forward, and something President Trump campaigned on, and I'm so proud the American people gave him the victory and affirmation for that.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and we completely agree with that concept because it would enable the federal government to work more closely with state agencies that in many cases perform a lot of the same functions. And that's another form of duplication. That isn't necessarily turning those functions over to the states, but it is determining where it might be more effective and more efficient and deliver those services. And just briefly, the objective of an agency should be to deliver a service to someone, period, right? And then determine how that gets done, and then determine how much it costs. And the reverse is true. It's spend the money. If that doesn't work, spend more money. Don't take the time to figure out what works. This would be very helpful to reaching that conclusion.
Well, in that vein, and as my esteemed colleague to my left, Mr. Gill, noted, all the programs that were all the money frivolously spent by USAID, I have to imagine the people of Texas's 26th congressional district or Georgia's 3rd congressional district would not have made those decisions had they been employees at that agency headquarters. And in that vein, I just want to also note for the record, you'd have to drive an hour from where we sit right now to reach a precinct that voted for President Trump. Yet, of course, we saw a landslide victory across our country. To me, you need a federal workforce that's reflective of the balance that America is. And in this general area, we've got 95% Democrat participation in elections. To me, that's from where our federal workforce is coming. That's why we have so many problems that we've discussed here today. I also want to note, Mr. Schatz, your leadership at Citizens Against Government Waste has led to trillions of dollars of savings for Americans. You've done an incredible service to your country. And I just want to close with a final question to you. Based on your wealth and knowledge and experience, what are the most prominent patterns or locations that you find waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal government? Any advice to the committee before I finish?
Well, it runs across all agencies. And I would note on the Department of Defense, when the Grace Commission made its recommendations and found $424.4 billion in savings, 25% of that was in the Department of Defense. As has been noted, they failed an audit. Joint Strike Fighter is pretty much of a mess. Less than half, about 55% of them are available for use. So the procurement system needs a lot of reform. Information technology, 80% of the systems are legacy systems, and some of them, they're so old you can't find people to fix them or service them. And that's an investment, in our view, that's worth making. Upgrade those systems, and then people will be able to find out from the click of a button, what's going on with their money, and that would be extremely helpful for transparency, accountability, and more efficiency.
Well, I'm grateful for your testimony today. I hope every committee member reads all the innovative solutions that you've offered us, and likewise, I hope my colleagues join me in helping relocate our departments and agencies outside of Washington, D.C. I yield back to our distinguished chairman, Mr. Comer.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Min from California.
Mr. Schatz, Dr. Resch, thank you for testifying today. Now, this hearing is happening because of Republican concerns about the size of our government. But I would submit they're missing basic economics here, and particularly the chapter on public goods. As a reminder, public goods are things that governments provide that we all benefit from. National defense, infrastructure, education, police, firefighting, air traffic control, all examples of public goods. And the most important thing to recognize is that these are all things that private markets typically do not provide on their own. So when we're talking about making cuts to the FAA budget for air traffic controllers, understand that no one is going to fill that gap to make our skies safer. When we cut the budget for FDA and USDA inspections, no one's going to step up to come and ensure that our foods and drugs are safe. That is why the government provides these things. Now, I realize it makes for a great talking point to talk about getting rid of waste in government. And I'm sure there are many examples we can point to. I know my colleagues have pointed to some if we look closely enough. just as I'm sure we can find lots of examples of waste and corruption in large private companies as well. But here's the thing. The reality is that what you're looking for is just not possible at the scale you're talking about. Elon Musk and many of my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle have publicly stated that their intention is to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. The problem is that this is just bad math. And yes, I'm Asian, and yes, I'm pretty good at math, but you don't have to be very good at math to understand this. The chart behind me illustrates very clearly the entire domestic discretionary budget that's the primary focus of today's hearing is only $917 billion. You can cut everything: education, food safety, air traffic safety, wildfire prevention, affordable housing, the FBI, the DOJ, and you're still not even halfway to the amount that Elon Musk and the Repubs are trying to cut. You can fire every single person in the federal government. That's 4% of the federal budget, a tiny fraction of what you're looking to cut right now. You can cut all military spending, $805 billion. You're still not there. So let's be realistic and talk about what's really at stake here. It's when we're talking about $2 trillion, we're talking about non-discretionary spending, which is a fancy way of saying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. These are earned benefits, the checks that my mom and dad rely on for their retirement, that your moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas rely on, that they spent their lifetimes paying into. And let's be clear, this is what Elon Musk and many of my Repub colleagues are targeting right now. They've made it very clear with their statements, such as when Nancy Mace in March 2023 called for huge cuts to Social Security, saying everything is on the table, quote. And so that brings me to my first question. Dr. Resch, I assume you're familiar with the United States Constitution.
Yes, sir.
Article 1, Section 1 states, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Article 1, Section 9 gives exclusive authority for appropriations to Congress. Are you aware of any provisions in the Constitution that allow the President of the United States to unilaterally take away Congress's legislative and appropriations authority?
I am not.
Are you aware of any provisions in the Constitution that allow a special governmental employee appointed by the President to take away Congress's powers?
I am not.
Are you aware of any references in the Constitution to efficiency?
I am not.
That's right, because they do not exist. Because efficiency, while important, is not something that the founders thought was a constitutional priority. Founders were very aware that democracy was a messy and inefficient way of running a government. It would be far more efficient to have a monarch or dictator decide how to fund programs rather than have 435 members of the House and 100 senators debate and deliberate and vote about it. But this country was not founded as a monarchy, not founded as a dictatorship, because we expressly decided that democratic representation, as inefficient as it might be, was more important than pure efficiency. And that's the point that my Repub colleagues need to recognize. We can debate our views on Social Security and Medicare and government spending. In fact, it's critically important that we do that. But those debates belong here in Congress. And we should not lose sight of the fact that Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, is playing God with the federal government, deciding at a whim which programs and agencies he wants to, quote, delete at the flip of a switch. Elmo has gained control over our federal payment systems. He's universally declared that certain agencies we've created here in Congress are terminated. He's locked federal employees out of their systems, and he's threatening to end federal disbursements that he does not like. This is all illegal and grossly unconstitutional. The United States of America is not a monarchy, it is not a dictatorship, and Elon Musk is breaking the law repeatedly by taking Congress's legislative authority. So to my Repub colleagues, I want to plead with you, this is not a partisan issue. It is your authority here in Congress that is being stolen by Elon Musk right now. If you do not speak up, you are going to permanently lose your legislative authority. We all swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that is what I'm asking you all to do. We have an obligation to uphold the rule of law and defend the Constitution against this unprecedented assault. I yield to the ranking member.
I have 3 seconds to thank you. I thank the gentleman for his observations and for his cogent points.
I also would like to request unanimous consent to enter into the record a New York Times article titled U.S. Agencies Fund and Fight with Elon Musk. A Trump presidency could give him
Without objection to order.
Which describes how Elon Musk were, quote, promised $3 billion across nearly 100 different contracts last year with 17 federal agencies.
Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I also have a unanimous consent request, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that the statements of the American Federation of Government Employees and National Active and Retired Federal Employees be entered into the record.
Without objection to order.
And I further ask unanimous consent that the article DOGE AIDS Search Medicare Agency also be entered into the record.
Without objection to order.
I thank the chair.
Chair recognizes Ms. Tlaib.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Since we're entering items to the record, it's really important, as I do a lot of these question lines, to center it around my constituents and my residents who very much feel like there's so much instability and chaos right now. So if I may, I would like to submit a letter from the CEO and founder of Cody Rouge Action Alliance in the 12th Congressional District in Michigan, just about the freezing of the funds and what it meant for her seniors and many of the community members that she supports. Many of them are retirees. Many of them rely heavily on this agency to, again, supplement the high cost of living right now for many of our families. And so if I may, I would ask unanimous consent to, again, send this letter.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you. You know, I want to cut through the BS because I am from Detroit and we like to speak truth to power and be very honest. You know, the American people feel very much we're in a constitutional crisis. They cannot understand, you know, this billionaire. I don't even know really how to describe him. Of course, he's the richest man in the world. And to think that he can just walk in to an agency that I can tell you for many of my families from the Social Security, the Medicare, I mean, it is literally part of how they survive in our country. And it's not just about the private information. It's about the fact that this person who they have no way of, they didn't get to elect him. He's not held accountable to them, the community, the public. And so they are very much living in fear right now. And we are in a constitutional crisis. One of the things that I continue to talk to our ranking member about and thinking about even the folks that voted for the president and others, if I was to ask the American people, do you think Elon Musk cares about you? Do they think that he cares about your disabled child that relies on Department of Education services through the IDEA Act? Do you think he cares for any of our families right now? No matter how hard they work, they're still in survivor mode, not thriving in our country. The disconnect that his own lived experience will never, ever be able to connect to that family in North Dakota, to the teacher in Detroit, to the child living and trying to survive through the education program, living with autism, and so much more. And so I'm just curious. I mean, really, this is my, do you think Elon Musk cares about the American people, Mr. Shades?
I don't think that's the issue. I think the question is what is going to be done about the $36 trillion debt and the $2 trillion.
So you want to talk about the
deficit.
debt, but the Congress, they're in control. Why not go through the public process? If you want to make cuts, then vote to cut it. Why are you having this person do it? Are you giving him your power as an elected person representing 750,000 people? You represent equal number of people. I do. I want to get a chance to vote on this, hear from my constituents, have it be done in a public process. You want to deal with it, you're in power. You have a trifecta, the White House, the Senate, and the House. But no, you want to do it this way. The cruelty of it. The fact that even American people, no matter in their political affiliation, I'm telling you right now, feel like they have no control over the decisions being made. Why? Because members of Congress have circumvented and said, hey, we're good. Go ahead and do it for us. Go ahead. Even though they know it is going to impact farmers, veterans, disabled residents, folks living with disability, and so much more of these infrastructures that they don't understand support all of our families. So you can keep talking about the debt. They have control. They can deal with the debt if that's really what they want to do. Instead, they're just yielding their power to Elon Musk, who has, again, been unelected. And we can continue to say that. But one of the things you can go around the country is they don't want Elon Musk making that decision. They want their member of Congress that is elected making that decision, Mr. Shades. That's the problem. And I will never, and Mr. Chair knows this, vote your district. Come here and vote your district. If your district wants you to cut these various programs, go cut a public education, Department of Education, then go ahead and vote on it. Introduce a bill to cut the Department of Education. Do not say, hey, I don't have no constitution. You're just literally giving it to this person. It doesn't make any sense. Dr. Resch, do you think the American people think that Elon Musk cares about them?
I don't think the American people should really care what he thinks. They should have someone making decisions who's taken an oath to the Constitution.
Oh, that's actually very important, isn't it? You know, the Constitution gives Congress control over the spending, not the president, and certainly not Elon Musk. And the American people need to understand why that balance of government is there. It's to protect all of us from these kinds of decisions that are hurting people now. And Mr. Chair, just know this. This is the same man that continues to want to cut, but he has $20 billion in federal contracts. Can I get our money back? Because he is the richest man on earth, and he's still taking a handout from us, the public. $20 billion, Mr. Chair. If it's really about that and not about hurting these public infrastructures, which really are critical and important for, I guess, the most vulnerable, and really, you'd be surprised how many people in your community and in your districts, no matter, again, political affiliation, will be harmed by these decisions that, again, overpass the congressional public process. It's our constitutional duty and responsibility to be able to authorize spending and cuts. We should be able to do it, not Elon Musk. With that, I yield.
Gentlelady yields. That concludes our questions. In closing, I want to thank our witnesses once again for their testimony today. I'm now going to yield to the ranking member for some brief closing remarks.
I thank the chair and I thank our witnesses. You know, we've spent the entirety of this hearing under the rubric of right-sizing government, as if we all know presumptively what the right size is, which of course nobody does. In fact, it's not even necessarily a sensical question. But we have ignored half of what should be involved in any enterprise, business, nonprofit, or government, and that is the revenue side of the picture. You cannot right-size, whatever that means, government by only looking at expenditures and investments. You've got to look at how we finance it. Does anyone think that Elon Musk, in running Tesla, had a meeting when he took it over and said to his management crew, whatever we do, we are never again discussing or modifying the price of a Tesla. Whatever it is today, it's frozen forever. And all company profits will be derived from spending, expenditure cuts. Of course not. I heard the governor of Iowa say we ought to run government like a business. Well, then run it like a business. And that means there are two sides to the ledger, revenue as well as expenditure. I also heard the governor of Iowa say that there's nothing wrong with looking at the enterprise and making recommendations. I couldn't agree more. But that isn't what Elon Musk and company are doing. They're taking a wrecking ball to the federal government. They're firing people. They're intruding in very sensitive databases. They are threatening to close down entire departments and agencies of the federal government without any mandate, without any confirmation by the U.S. Senate, and without a howdy-do by the Congress of the United States. This committee and Congress cannot be supine in the face of that threat. We must play our legitimate role. And if my colleagues on the other side can muster a majority to, in fact, shut down these agencies, then so be it. But it cannot be something delegated to an unelected billionaire oligarch from South Africa. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I must say, there's been a virus that has been spreading throughout the inside of Congress for the past 4 years. It's called Trump derangement syndrome, but it appears over the last week it's mutated now into Musk derangement syndrome. And all we have here is a business guy, an outsider, much like many outsiders and many business people on the local and state levels all over America that have been asked essentially to serve on a board to make recommendations to make government more efficient. What a noble idea on the federal level. And we welcome Elon Musk. We welcome any individual in America who has ideas on making government more efficient. But I will say this publicly, to make government more efficient and to live within our means, which is what the American people voted for in November, we're going to have to make cuts. We're going to have to reduce the size of government. And that's not going to be an easy task. It's easy to spend money. Everybody's popular when they're spending unlimited amounts of money and doing check presentations and things like that. But when it gets to making cuts, that's tough. That's what people in the private sector have to do every day. That's what people who work and pay taxes and struggle to make ends meet have to do every day. They have to make tough financial decisions. Congress has been immune for that for a long time. But the day has come and the American people have spoken to where we're going to have to tighten our belts. And that's what at least my side of the aisle is committed to doing. And we're going to work with DOGE. We're going to work with the Trump administration. We're going to work with all of his cabinet secretaries. We're willing to work with Democrats across the aisle on sincere ideas to make government more efficient, to end duplicative services, to reduce wasteful spending. That's what we want to do. That's what this hearing was about. And I want to thank our witnesses who came here today to testify about that. With that and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. If there's no further business without objection, the committee stands adjourned.
Secretary, are you planning to send U.S. troops to Gaza? Can you rule out sending troops to Gaza? U.S. troops out of Syria.
I will not be here. It's just Jim, you never go. He goes in, I'm guessing you're turning.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yep.
Stay loaded. Thank you. I'm gonna do this.
Right, I understand. I'm just letting you know. Thank you. I'll give you what I can, but I ain't got much. It's only television. Go! Well, you know what? No. No, because I'll probably break it. There's a good chance of that. No, and I feel like I'm too city. But I twist a lot, I move them. Nah, I'll be okay. I got the flip out. And I feel like I can make this move better on this surface than on that. Thank you, though. Not during. I got no place to go. I can't get to my lower step. If he goes up high for the signing. I got crusty. Anything for you. That's fine. I mean, it looks like it's going to be. If you had, too bad you don't have a bird. Too bad you don't have a bird. Go in the bird cage with him. What? Well, nobody likes you, right? starting a trend. I don't know. Room right in front of me, Vincent. A mic for Garrett? Microphone for Garrett? That Scritch can hear? It's for Scritch's lunchtime camera. What? It's for a question? For questions. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Stacey Klein. Jim's got something.
All right, we're waiting for President Trump to come on in. I am here with you, watching, just waiting. I'll be signing an executive order here to ban men playing in women's sports, which is amazing that we have to have a day like today, but this is where we're at. So we're waiting for the president to arrive. I wouldn't think it would be too much longer. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Pete Hegseth is in a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. I showed you the arrival of the prime minister to the Secretary of Defense. That's going on right now as well. So another busy day at the White House. We'll wait for President Trump here, and we'll watch this together.
President of the United States.
Thank you very much. This is a nice crowd, isn't it, huh? You've been waiting a long time for this. So have I. Actually, it was so ridiculous. But here we are. And this doesn't have to be long. It's just all about common sense. Doesn't have to be long. In a few moments, I'll sign a historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. It's about time. Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women. But before going further, I want to share some very exciting news from our military. After years of shrinking force numbers at levels that nobody has ever seen before, 4 years of this we went through, and missed recruiting targets every single month, it was just announced that in December, the U.S. Army had its single best recruitment in more than 15 years. Thanks. Every single day, nearly 350 new soldiers enlisted to defend our nation, and they're very, very happy to have done so. We've done lots of interviews, and we asked why this was taking place now, and they just said there's a spirit about our country that they haven't seen in many, many years, and I happen to agree with that. But it really is clear proof that the spirit is sweeping our armed forces, and we have a great leader in Pete. As you know, we all know Pete so well. He's going to be fantastic, and so many of our great heroes, and people are starting to understand what hero is all about. So that is something that is very important. We've gotten the woke lunacy out of our military. And now we're very importantly getting it out of women's sports. That's taking place very strongly. So in recent years, the radical left has waged an all-out campaign to erase the very concept of biological sex and replace it with a militant transgender ideology. You've heard a little bit about this, haven't you? Huh? Just a little bit? Does anybody agree with them? No. Would be not a good thing to say yes right here. Female athletes have been forced onto the front lines, and men claiming to be girls have stolen more than 3,500 victories, that's a lot, and invaded more than 11,000 competitions designed for women. Last year, a male cyclist posing as a woman competed in the 800-mile Arizona Trail Race, a very big deal in cycling, and obliterated the women's course record by nearly 5.5 hours. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it, huh? 5.5 hours, but you have to hear the weightlifting records. You think that's bad. The weightlifting's worse. In 2023, a man in women's powerlifting broke 2 world records and outlifted his closest female opponent in one event by 440 pounds. And they continue to defend themselves. Mr. Congressman, you know that, right? They continue to defend themselves. We hope they continue onward because I don't think we can lose a race. This was one of the big reasons that we all won, and it's one of the big reasons that we had a record, a landslide like they haven't seen before, very often anyway. And who could forget last year's Paris Olympics where a male boxer stole the women's gold medal after brutalizing his female opponent so viciously that she had to forfeit just after 46 seconds, and she was a championship fighter. And actually, they had two women or two people that transitioned, and both of them won gold medals, and they won them very convincingly. But all of that ends today because with this executive order, the war on women's sports is over. Thank you, everybody. Should have been done long ago, actually. Thank you. Thank you very much. With my action this afternoon, we're putting every school receiving taxpayer dollars on notice that if you let men take over women's sports teams or invade your locker rooms, you will be investigated for violations of Title IX and risk your federal funding. There will be no federal funding. So this will effectively end the attack on female athletes at public K-12 schools and virtually all U.S. colleges and universities. I don't think we've missed anything, but if we do, we'll make it up very quickly with an order, and I don't think we will at all. I want to, before we go on, I want to thank so many people that have worked so hard in the political establishment, and they're before me largely, and I think I'm going to miss a few. It always happens when you do this, but it's just one of those things. But we have many senators here, many governors here, many state attorneys generals here. They're all over the place, actually. I see. Some of them went after me, but they failed. And they're really friends, and they're friends of women's sports, that I can tell you. So Senator Marsha Blackburn, where's Marsha? Hi. Senator Katie Britt. Thank you, Katie. Mike Lee, where's Mike? Mike. I love his new haircut. I love that haircut, Mike. He just said the hell with it, right? I think you look great. Senator Cynthia Loomis. Cynthia, where are you? Cynthia, hi, Cynthia. Doing a good job. And Roger Marshall. Thank you, Roger. Great. Mark Wayne Mullen, Oklahoma. I love Oklahoma. I don't know what it is, Oklahoma. I won 77 out of 77 counties. It's never been done. Second was Ronald Reagan. 56, right? Yeah. And Tommy Tuberville, a great coach. You know, his quarterback was named Mahomes. He was a great college coach. And I said, how good was he? He said, you don't want to know how good. He made me into a great coach. He's pretty good quarterback, right? Yeah, he was very good. He's a good guy, too. Also, governors, we have Governor Glenn Youngkin, Virginia. Thank you, Glenn. Good job. Bill Lee of Tennessee. Bill, thank you. Jeff Landry, Louisiana. Thank you, Jeff. Kim Reynolds of Iowa. Thank you. We're trying to move, education back to the states. You do know that. We're making a big move, and we're counting on Linda McMahon. And sitting next to you is the new Star is Born. Caroline, congratulations. You've done great. New Star is Born. Patrick Morrissey. Patrick, congratulations. Great race. A great friend of mine, and he's really helped us at the border, done a great job. of Texas, Greg Abbott. Thank you, Greg. Jim Pillen, where are you? Jim, very good. Very good. Are you feeling good? He had a bad fall. You doing all right, huh? Good. You look great. Brad Little. Brad, thank you, Brad. Good job. Good job. Do you like education going back to your state? You'll make it top, right? You know, just so people understand, in the education world, we're ranked very, very poorly. We're 38, 39, and 40 out of 40 countries. We're at the bottom of the pack almost always, or very close to it. That just came out. We're 40 out of 40. And if we move it back to the states, I will guarantee you that if you take Idaho, you take Iowa, you take almost any of the states that I'm looking at right now, they'll be as good as Norway. You have Norway, you have Sweden, you have Denmark. I must say you have China that's very high in the pack, which is no longer, we can say it has to be a small area. China is very big, but they do a very good job. But we'll have at least 35 of our states that will be as good or better than any of those countries, and we have to get it done. Attorney General Steve Marshall. Steve, thank you very much. Steve, wherever you may be. General Tim Griffin. Thank you. Thank you. A person who was so wonderful. Brenna Bird, where are you? Brenna Bird. Thank you. She supported me before people wanted to support me, right, Brenna? Wow. Thank you very much. I appreciated it. Andrew Bailey, great job. Where's Andrew? Great. Stand up, Andrew. One of the great attorney generals. Thank you very much. One of the greats, really. And Jason Miyares. Thanks, Jason. And now we get back to our members of Congress, and we'll go quickly, but it's a great group of people. Steve Scalise is right in front here. What a brave guy Steve is. Steve went through a lot, and he proved one thing to me, only one thing, that his wife loved him. His wife loves him because I went to the hospital that night, and he was not given even a shot, right, Mike? And I was with him, and I was with his wife, and she was devastated. She was really devastated. And I've been to, similar situations, not quite as bad, but the wives were not so devastated. And I can tell you that great wife of yours loves you. So anyway, and what you've done is incredible. The way you've come back, it's you look better now than you did before it happened. But nobody wants to go through that. Yeah, it's amazing. Tom Emmer doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Tom. Great job. Lisa McLean. Lisa. Hi. Hi, Lisa. Hi. Good job. Virginia Fox. Hi, Virginia. Tim Wahlberg, Michigan. Tim, great. Jason Smith, great man on taxes. Great man on how are the taxes doing? Okay. We're going to get good things passed, I hope, right? Juan Ciscomaris, Arizona. Where are you, Juan? Hello, Juan. Stand up, Juan. You look so good. You always look good. Kevin Kiley. Kevin, wherever you may be. What happened? How come he had no applause? Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert. Very much a leader in this. Thank you, Lauren. Kat Kamek, Florida. Thank you, Kat. Byron Donalds. He's doing good. Byron's doing good. Where is he? You're doing good, Byron. Laurel Lee. Thank you, Laurel. Thank you. Great job. Anna Paulina Luna. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Greg Stubbe hit a home run wearing a Trump cap. The only one to hit a home run out of the park during your crazy baseball game, right? I think I will come. I think I'll come. If you're playing, I'll come. Somebody that's very shy. This is a very shy person, and but she's trying to break out of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Victoria Sparts. Thank you, Victoria. Great job. Ashley Hinson. Ashley, thank you. Marionette Miller Meeks. Good job you did. Good job. Great job. Mary Miller. Hi, Mary. Julia Letlow. Hi, Julia. Claudia Tenney from New York. Claudia. Hi, Claudia. Hi. Great job. Nicole Maliatakis. Hi, Nicole. Good. Doing good. I see a great poll with you, Nicole. Michelle Fishbach. Thank you. Great job. Ann Wagner, Missouri. Thanks. Sherry Biggs, South Carolina. Thanks, Sherry. Great job. Nancy Mace. Where's Nancy? Here's something. Oh, are you a believer in what we're doing, Nancy? Nancy takes it on right from the start, right? Would you like to say something? Would you like to say we're doing the right thing? Good. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nancy. Stephanie Bice, Oklahoma. Thanks, Stephanie. Diana Harshbarger. Thanks, Diana. Good job. Tim Burchett. Tim, I watched you on television the other day. You were unbelievable. You ripped that guy apart. Man, that poor guy, he started getting a little fresh with Tim, and Tim just ripped him apart. That was beautiful. I actually left a message. That's good. Great job, Tim. That was great. Monica De La Cruz. Monica. Great. Ronnie Jackson. Ronnie. Dr. Ronnie. He's a doctor, a great admiral, and a great congressman, right? Pretty good. He has his choice. What do you like doing best, Ronnie? That's fine. Who is the healthiest patient you ever had? You know why I liked him? The fake news asked, so doctor, he had Obama, Bush, and Trump in the White House. He was the White House doctor. And they asked him, who's the healthiest of the three? He said, it's not close. It's Donald Trump. And from that moment, I love this guy. Right? Thank you, Ronnie. Wesley Hunt from Texas. Hi, Wesley. Beth Van Dyne. Beth from Texas. Thanks, Beth. Burgess Owens, a great athlete, an NFL star. Ken Kiggins from Virginia. Thank you. Thank you, honey. Thank you very much, Jen. I appreciate it. Harriet Hageman, what a lawyer. Ooh. One of the best, one of the most talented lawyers you'll ever see. What she did to her opponent was horrible. Let's see, who was her opponent? Let's see. Oh, does anybody remember her opponent? We tend to forget. We forgot that one, huh? And, you know, your speaker, I'm going to introduce him later anyway, but your speaker has been fantastic. Stand up, Mike. He's great. What a good man. A really good man. Also, some friends of ours, Sage Steele, has been very strong on the issue. Sage, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Great job. Tiffany, Justice, Tina, Deskovich, founders of Moms for Liberty. And they honored me, and it was a great honor. And thank you very much, both of you. Thank you. Heather Higgins, Andy Botner, Victoria Coley from Independent Women's Forum. It's a fantastic group of people that fought very hard on this issue. I think everybody in this room really fought very hard on this issue. Kim Fletcher, we know Kim. Debbie, I think Debbie's here. Crew Ledis from also Moms of America. And Penny Lance, of course, CEO of the Concerned Women for America. That is a lot of people. Thank you very much, Penny. Good job you do. That's a lot of people. Can I give here, what don't you hold that? Will you sell it tonight? So just to finish up, I'm directing the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who, by the way, is doing a fantastic job. In fact, he just left Panama. We're trying to take back the Panama Canal, little things like that. It'll all happen. But Marco is going to make clear to the International Olympic Committees there, and he's going to make it as clear as anybody can make it, that America categorically rejects transgender lunacy. We want them to change everything having to do with the Olympics and having to do with this absolutely ridiculous subject that we even have to talk about this subject. If you went back 10 years or 15 years and you would move forward and listen to this, you'd say, what the hell are they talking about? This is impossible. But you have people out there, Democrats, that are still totally in favor. They can't win the argument. They can't win a debate. They look like fools, and they continue to go on. And it's okay, because as long as they do this and open borders and all of the other things they talk about, transgender everything, all they want to do is transgender and men playing in women's sports and all of these crazy things. And if they continue, I think we're going to end up ultimately, it's not going to matter because we're never going to go along with them, and we're just going to keep winning elections, right, Mike? So when the Olympics comes to Los Angeles, I was responsible for getting the Olympics, and I said, oh boy, this is terrible because I got the Olympics and I won't be president. And then what happened is that an election, strange things happened in an election. So I missed 4 years, and now I have the Olympics. It was sort of circuitous. It was a circuitous situation. And we also have the World Cup coming, which is going to be fantastic. And we have, as you know, very importantly, 250 years coming. That's a big one next year, so that's a very big one. But in Los Angeles in 2028, my administration will not stand by and watch men beat and batter female athletes, and we're just not going to let it happen, and it's going to end, and it's ending right now, and nobody's going to be able to do a damn thing about it, because when I speak, we speak with authority. And for the same reason, just to make sure, I'm also directing our Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who's also she's out there with you, Greg, a fantastic job. She's unbelievable. I was watching her riding yesterday on a horse. She was as good as anybody. She's very good. To deny any and all visa applications made by men attempting to fraudulently enter the United States while identifying themselves as women athletes to try and get into the games, maybe where they are unable to get into the games. We're honored to be joined today by many incredible advocates for women's sports, including the brave swimmer at the forefront of this battle. And Riley Gaines is a person that I've been watching. She fought hard. Riley was a 12-time All-American. Well, that's pretty good. 12-time All-American who sacrificed countless hours in the pool just for a chance at the title. It's so important to her. She gave up everything and just gave everything she had. But then the league forced her to share a spot on the podium with a male swimmer who took her trophy while the media celebrated this stolen glory. And Riley is just a tremendous athlete, and it was a very unfair situation. I watched it. A lot of people watched it. It was ridiculous, frankly. But I want to thank Riley. She really has been in the forefront. People that aren't that well versed in this would say that she was the leader. And great job, Riley. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And also with us is another great champion for women, Peyton McNabb. In high school, Peyton was a rock star athlete. Where is Peyton? Where is Peyton? Hi, Peyton. Nice to see you. Good job. Good job. Looks like a good athlete to me. In high school, Peyton was a rock star athlete preparing for a future in college sports, but in one volleyball match, a much taller and stronger male spiked the ball right in her face, knocking her unconscious, partially paralyzing her right side and leaving her with a traumatic brain injury. And Peyton said it was 100% avoidable if only my rights as a female athlete had been more important than a man's feelings. And we can't let it happen, and it's not going to happen. Not going to happen anymore, Peyton. It's not going to happen. Are you okay? Are you good? I'm doing a lot better. Good. That's good. Thank you. We're also pleased to be joined by many incredible leaders on this issue. And as I mentioned before, Speaker Mike Johnson, and he has been so strong on this issue because he's a man of common sense. I mean, it really is. It's common sense more than anything else. So, Mike, thank you. Great job. Great job in everything. He's got the easiest job of any politician in history. He's got the nicest, like 200 and almost 20. It sort of varies between, depends on how many people I take from my administration. It goes up and down a little bit, but I promised I won't take any more. I just wanted to see how good he was. I was testing you. And we have some great people, but he's filling them up rapidly. He had some big wins the other day, very big wins the other day. But you've done a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate it. We all appreciate it. And also the dozens of members of the House and Senate and governors that we, attorney generals, so many people, and the people outside that can't even get in. This room is packed. And, I offered to build a ballroom. I'm very good at building ballrooms. I build beautiful ballrooms. And I actually offered to build a ballroom for the White House. I was going to build it right there. This was going to be the reception room. And then I was going to build a beautiful, beautiful ballroom like I have at Mar-a-Lago, as beautiful as it can be. It was going to cost about $100 million. I offered to do it, and I never heard back. I offered to do it to the Biden administration, very active administration. They didn't hear back. And I said again and again, 3-4 times, I said to top people, and they just didn't know what to do. They sort of said, this is good, but they had no idea. So I'm going to try and make the offer to myself, because we could use a bigger room, right, Marshall? We could use a bigger room. President, would you like to build? Yeah, I would. We could use at the White House. It would actually be a beautiful addition. It's going to cost nothing. I'll spend the whole thing myself. We'll do a big, beautiful room, but we could use it at the White House. You know what they do when they have a big ceremony? They put up a tent. And somehow I think we've outgrown the tent stuff, right? Don't you think? So we'll see if they can, we'll see if Trump will approve it. But the actions we're taking today are the latest in a sweeping effort to reclaim our culture and our laws from the radical left crusade against biological reality. On day one, I made it official, and I'm making it official policy of the United States government that there is, two genders. We have two genders. What might they be? Man and woman, right? Male and female. Male and female. Can't think of too many others, but it's pretty amazing. I rescinded federal funds to, and this is so important, to any program that promotes transgender ideology using taxpayer dollars. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And last week, I effectively banned the chemical castration and surgical mutilation of minor children. Can you believe I even have to say that? I banned governor, I banned, that's just like, who would ever think we have to even say that? Last week I banned. Every day we're ending the extremism of the last 4 years. We have other things that are just as ridiculous, not having to do with the subject, but just as ridiculous. Open borders where people are allowed to pour in from all over the world, from jails and prisons and mental institutions and insane asylums, people that are very sick, people that are very evil, killers, murderers. Many of them murdered more than one person. And we have to justify the fact that we're moving them out. We are moving them out in tremendous numbers. Tom Homan and Christie are doing a fantastic job, and the governor and other governors too. But that we have to even fight for this stuff is just incredible. And the media doesn't want to talk about it because it's nothing they can talk about. It's just, they just don't want to really talk very much about it. Serious problem, but we're doing a great job, and the people understand, and that's why we won in a landslide. You know, they made it easy. And at some point, you know, we have to hope they do come around, because we can never let this happen again. What's happened to our country, we can never let this happen again. So we are restoring sanity and common sense very simply to our government. We're defending the rights and safety and pride of the American people, including our great, great, great female athletes. What athletes you are, too. I tell you. And, you know, I'm not allowed to say this politically. It could end my career. They're really beautiful people. These are beautiful people. But you know, like everything else, it's a little bit different today. You're not allowed to say that, because if you call a woman or a girl beautiful, that's the end of your career. But let's take a chance on it, Mike. Let's take a chance. So I want to thank everybody for being here. It's fantastic. And this is sort of a big, big day. It shouldn't have even been necessary to take place. This started a long time ago, and we ended it today. And I'm going to sign the executive order right now, and everything I said will go into effect immediately, okay? Thank you. Down front. Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you. You know, if you'd like to gather around me, I think I'm going to be okay. Come on. Come on. Secret Service is worried about them. If we have to worry about them, we have big problems. Okay, do you want to do this? Watch what I do, and then I'm going to give you some pens, okay? You ready? What a nice picture this is, huh, Governor? You ready? We'll do a good job. Wait, let me press that. I want to make this a really good signature, because this is, you know, this is a big one, right? Oh, I think we have a 10. We have a 10.
God bless you, Mr. President.
Pretty good, huh? I see that. Okay? Good. Now you're going to go out and win those events, right? Nice to see you all. Nice to see you. Great going, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you, kids. Here. Take a pen. Thank you. I'll give some of these out, okay? Take a pen. Take a pen.
Thank you so much.
Where's Riley?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all.
President Trump is in charge.
All right, there you go. That was great stuff there. I thought he might take some questions, but they just cut the feed right away, so I guess not. All right, good stuff from the president. Those pens will be worth something, yes. Yeah. So. Oh, actually, I see behind me on the screens, they still have the live shot up. I wonder why they cut it so quickly on the pool feed, but either way. All right, folks, we'll see you tonight, 8 o'clock, live from Studio 6B. I'm back. I heard last night was fun. We'll see what happens tonight. 8 o'clock, live from Studio 6B, Real America's Voice. We'll see you then.